The year is 1995. People had just gotten to know Brad Pitt from movies such as Interview with the Vampire, this other movie called True Romance, this other movie called Johnny Suede, and this other movie called Thelma and Louise. David Fincher has just come back from directing Alien 3, which was a disaster class. And he comes across this story that is inspired by real life events. And he consults the very hot Brad Pitt and the very goated at the time, still today, I think, Morgan Freeman, who I don't know what the conversation is about him right now, but I don't want to talk about that. And they come together and they make a movie called Se7en, or as stylized in all the posters from the 90s, Se7en. This is a movie directed by David Fincher, where we follow these two detectives called Somerset and Mills. Mills is a detective who has come from another city and is asked to be transferred to this part of town and assist with a crime that has been happening in this town. Somerset played by Morgan Freeman, Mills played by Brad Pitt. Now Somerset is like this old man who has seen everything. He has experienced everything through his work being a policeman, being a detective. He even knows what questions to ask, much to the disapproval of his colleagues in the precinct. And then he meets this guy, Mills, who is, like I said, has been transferred from another city, and he's curious about helping out with this investigation. So what you are immediately thrown into this movie is essentially them investigating these killings that have been happening by this mysterious person. Now, the pattern that they form with these killings, that all these killings are done in the name of the seven deadly sins. Do I know the seven deadly sins? I don't know. Let me see. Greed, sloth, wrath, envy, vanity. I forgot the two. Fuck. Anyway, we follow these detectives who basically go to different crime scenes, trying to pick out clues, trying to learn about this person. And let me tell you guys that, like, it seems to be a David Fincher thing. It's as if David Fincher, when he makes these crime stories, you would see a similar example in this other movie called Zodiac. He likes to look at these stories from a psychological standpoint. He doesn't make these crime stories as a means of like the detective is going to catch the bad guy and then we all go home because everyone is happy, the crimes have been solved. It's more about how when you take on this kind of work where you have to get into the mind of the person that you're chasing, where you try to understand why a certain person would act a certain way, you have to really consider how that job is exhausting. That is what David Fincher specializes on. And you watch in this movie, without giving too much away, you're watching the Somerset character played by Morgan Freeman, who is essentially has seen it all, to the point where he kind of is over it. Like there's a scene where he gets in a taxi and the cab driver is like, "Where do you want to go?" And Morgan Freeman says, "Far away from here." He is so over it. Like there's even a theory which is proof as how much he's so over it, that like all the crimes were orchestrated by Somerset. I honestly do not believe that. It doesn't make sense to me. I just believe that Somerset is a person who's seen it all, and Mills is the young, ambitious, newly married, about to be a father type figure. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be the best as I can." Like there's even a part where his wife, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, literally calls him Serpico. And Serpico is obviously the cop who had to face corruption within the police force and almost died because he was the only member of that police force who stood up for what's right. So that's essentially the character of Mills. But this movie tests him so much. It tests him so much to the point where you can see, once again, the contrast between how these crimes affect Mills versus how these crimes affect a Morgan Freeman who is just over it. Guys, that is just the summary and my thoughts of the movie called Se7en, directed by David Fincher. And if you've never heard of this movie, I'm going to first ask you, where have you been all your life? But also I'm going to be nice and say, just give it a watch, because it's pretty clear you're about to have one hell of an experience as a viewer, an experience that I wish I could have again for the first time. And of course, the movie also has a surprise appearance from a certain person who I cannot name right now because the conversation is really bad around this person. But I will give credit and say that that person, the minute he appears, he almost steals the entire movie. Because it's really about how, what do you do when you come across a person who is so unhinged, who believes so much in their own bullshits, and how does that work versus you as a person who has strong values, strong principles. And yeah, I personally think this is David Fincher at his best. I have a soft spot for Zodiac. I think that's another great movie by him. But for now, this is a movie that I really need you guys to watch. Guys, thank you for watching. And of course, hope you all have yourselves a lovely day.